The stars stretched and twisted around the small human ship as it dropped out of hyperspace. Captain James Morrison gripped his chair as the vessel shuddered back into normal space. Through the main window, he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. The Centauri trade hub hung before them like a massive metal city floating in the darkness. The space station was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Thousands of lights sparkled across its surface, and ships of every shape and size moved around it like busy insects. Some vessels were sleek and silver. Others were covered in strange crystals that caught the starlight. A few looked like they were made of living metal that shifted and flowed as they moved. "My God," whispered Lisa Rodriguez, the chief engineer, as she stared out at the sight. "It's bigger than anything we ever imagined." Morrison nodded slowly. After 2 long years of travel from Earth, they had finally reached their destination. This was humanity's first real contact with the galaxy beyond their solar system. Everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed of, was about to begin. "Communications," Morrison called to Diana Foster at her station. "Send our request for docking permission." Diana's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Message sent, Captain. Now we wait." The waiting did not take long. Within minutes, a response came crackling through the speakers. The voice was strange, with too many clicking sounds, but the translation software did its job. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself and state your business." Morrison stood up straighter. This was the moment they had practiced for countless times. "This is Captain James Morrison of the Earth vessel New Frontier. We represent the human species and request permission to dock for diplomatic meetings." There was a long pause. When the voice came back, Morrison could hear something in it that he did not like. It sounded amused. "Earth vessel, you are cleared for docking at berth 712 in Section 9. Follow the guidance beacons." Dr. Robert Anderson, their medical officer, frowned. "Section 9? That doesn't sound very important." Mike Thompson, their tactical officer, was already checking his displays. "Captain, I'm reading the station layout. Section 9 is at the bottom of the station. It's where they dock cargo ships and mining vessels." Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "Understood. Take us in, Diana." As the New Frontier moved toward the massive station, other ships began to take notice. The human vessel was small compared to most of the alien craft around them. Its hull was painted white and blue, but the paint was scratched and faded from their long journey. Compared to the gleaming alien ships, it looked old and worn. A group of tall, blue-skinned aliens with 4 arms each were standing on the observation deck of a nearby ship. They pointed at the human vessel and made sounds that the computer translated as laughter. "Look at that primitive thing," one of them said to his companions. "It looks like something our ancestors might have built 1,000 years ago." Another alien, this one looking like it was made of living crystal, broadcast a message on the public channels. "Is that really the best the humans can do? We have cargo containers that look more advanced." More alien ships began to gather around them, their crews eager to get a look at the newcomers. The comments that came over the radio grew more mocking. "Check out those chemical burn marks on the hull. Do they still use rocket fuel? I bet their computers are the size of entire rooms. Someone should tell them this is a trade hub, not a museum for ancient technology." Morrison's crew listened to the comments with growing anger. Lisa's hands were clenched into fists. Mike looked ready to fight someone. Even quiet Dr. Anderson was shaking his head in disgust. "Captain," Diana said quietly, "should I respond to these transmissions?" Morrison thought for a moment. Every instinct told him to defend his ship and his crew. But they were here as diplomats, not warriors. They needed to be smart about this. "No," he said finally. "Let them talk. We'll show them what humans can do when it matters." The New Frontier moved slowly through the massive docking area toward Section 9. As they traveled, Morrison got a better look at the other ships. The alien vessels were incredible works of art and engineering. Some seemed to be made of pure energy held in impossible shapes. Others looked like they had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves and organic lines. But as impressive as they looked, Morrison noticed something else. Many of the ships seemed designed more for show than for real work. They were beautiful, but they also looked fragile. Their hulls were thin and delicate. Their weapons, when he could see them, were elegant but complex. The human ship was different. It was built thick and strong, designed to work in harsh conditions and keep working. When things went wrong, every system had backups, and every backup had backups. It was not pretty, but it was reliable. Approaching berth 712, Diana reported, beginning docking sequence. As they moved into position, Morrison could see alien dock workers, stopping their tasks to stare at them. Most were laughing and pointing. A few took pictures with devices that flashed and beeped. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that rang through the ship. They had arrived. "Well," Morrison said, looking around at his crew, "this is it, our first day as members of the galactic community." Lisa stood up and stretched. "Not much of a welcome if you ask me." "Maybe not," Morrison agreed. "But we're here. That's what matters." Through the docking port window, they could see aliens gathering to get a look at the human crew. Most were still laughing and making jokes. Morrison could see them placing bets on how long it would take for the primitive humans to embarrass themselves. "Captain," Mike said, checking his equipment one more time, "what's our play here?" Morrison straightened his uniform and looked at his team. These were good people, the best Earth had to offer. They had trained for years and traveled across the galaxy for this moment. They deserved better than to be treated like a joke. "We play it smart," he said. "We learn everything we can about these people and their technology. We make friends where we can and avoid making enemies. And when the time comes to show them what humans are really capable of, we'll be ready." The airlock cycled open, and cool air from the station flowed into their ship. It smelled strange, like metal and ozone and things Morrison could not identify. "Remember," he told his crew as they prepared to step onto the station, "we represent all of humanity now. Let's make Earth proud." As they walked through the airlock, Morrison could hear the alien voices growing louder. More laughter, more jokes, more comments about primitive human technology. He smiled grimly. Let them laugh, he thought. They would not be laughing for long. Captain Morrison and his crew stepped into the trade hub for the first time. The main corridor was massive, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows above. Hundreds of different alien species walked, floated, or crawled past them. The air buzzed with conversations in languages that sounded like music, static, or grinding metal. "Stay close," Morrison told his team as they made their way toward the diplomatic sector. "And remember, we're here to observe and learn." The aliens they passed gave them curious looks. Some pointed and whispered to their companions. Others took pictures with strange devices. A few simply stared with what might have been pity. Lisa. Rodriguez looked around at the incredible technology surrounding them. Lights that had no visible source glowed from the walls. Moving walkways seemed to float in midair without any support. Doors opened and closed by reading the thoughts of approaching beings. "This place makes our best cities look like cave paintings," she whispered to Dr. Anderson. The medical officer nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Advanced technology, yes, but look at how they treat each other." Morrison saw what Anderson meant. The corridor was clearly divided into sections. The tall, elegant aliens walked in the center, where the lighting was brightest and the walkways moved fastest. Shorter, less impressive species stayed to the sides, moving on foot and keeping their heads down. Some aliens wore collars or badges. That marked them as servants or slaves. "It's a hierarchy," Mike Thompson observed quietly. "The strong rule, the weak serve." They reached the diplomatic offices after 20 minutes of walking. The waiting area was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all hoping for meetings with the Trade Consortium leadership. Most ignored the humans completely, but a few made rude comments just loud enough to be heard. "More primitives looking for handouts," said a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. "Why do they even waste time with species that haven't discovered proper space travel yet?" added a floating blob covered in tentacles. Diana Foster clenched her fists. "Should I respond to that, Captain?" "No," Morrison said firmly. "We wait our turn, and we stay professional." Their wait lasted 3 hours. During that time, they watched as other species were called in for their meetings. The meetings for advanced species lasted an hour or more. The meetings for less advanced species lasted minutes. Finally, a metallic voice called out, "Human delegation, you may enter." The conference room was enormous, with a curved ceiling that showed a perfect view of space outside. Around a semicircular table sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. At the center was High Admiral Corvin, a massive lizard-like creature, with scales that shifted color as he moved. To his left sat Commander Vex Naltor, the blue-skinned Vortani who had granted them docking permission. To his right was Speaker Zenth, a being made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light. "So," Admiral Corvin said, his voice like grinding stone, "these are the humans we have heard about. You may state your business." Morrison stepped forward. "Thank you for meeting with us. I am Captain James Morrison, representing Earth and the human species. We come seeking peaceful trade relationships and cultural exchange." Several of the aliens exchanged glances. Some made sounds that the translator reported as laughter. Speaker Zenth leaned forward, his crystal body catching the light. "Cultural exchange? What could your species possibly offer us? We have observed your technology. You still use chemical rockets for propulsion. Your computers are crude machines. Your weapons fire metal projectiles like ancient savages. We may not be as advanced as you," Morrison replied carefully. "But humans have other qualities that might be valuable. We are adaptable, creative, and we never give up when faced with challenges." Commander Naltor waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Pretty words, but this consortium operates on practical matters. What can you produce that we cannot make better ourselves? What knowledge do you possess that we do not already know?" Morrison felt his team growing tense behind him. This was not going as they had hoped. "Perhaps," he said, "we could demonstrate our capabilities in some way. Show you what humans can accomplish." Admiral Corvin's scales shifted to a darker color. "You want to prove yourselves? Very well, but understand this, Captain Morrison. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Only the strong survive here. The weak are conquered, enslaved, or destroyed." As if to prove his point, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed and announcements echoed through the corridors. In multiple languages. "What's happening?" Lisa asked. Speaker Zenth's crystal form pulsed brighter. "Refugee ships arriving from the Kepler system. The Ravager Collective has conquered another world." Through the conference room's windows, they could see a fleet of damaged ships approaching the station. The vessels were crowded with survivors, their hulls scarred by weapons fire. Some ships were barely holding together, leaking atmosphere and debris as they limped toward safety. "The Ravagers," Admiral Corvin explained, "are one of the galaxy's most aggressive empires. They conquer worlds through overwhelming military force. Kepler Prime had a population of 8 billion beings. Most are now dead or enslaved." Morrison watched the refugee ships with growing horror. "What will the consortium do to help them?" Commander Naltor looked genuinely confused by the question. "Help them? Captain, the consortium is a trade organization, not a charity. Each species must defend itself. If the people of Kepler could not protect their world, that is their failure, not our responsibility." "But you have the power to stop the Ravagers," Diana protested. "Your combined fleets could drive them back." Speaker Zenth made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Why would we risk our ships and crews for a world that has already fallen? The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the natural order. Dr. Anderson stepped forward. With respect, that's not natural order. That's just cruelty. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Admiral Corvin's scales turned almost black. Doctor, you speak from ignorance. Your species has never faced a real threat. You have never had to fight for survival against an enemy that wants to wipe you from existence. When that day comes, and it will, you will understand that only strength matters. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Admiral was not just explaining galactic politics. He was delivering a warning. I see, Morrison said carefully. And how does a species prove its strength? Commander Naltor smiled, showing teeth like blue knives. Through trials, Captain. Tests that demonstrate capability, intelligence, and most importantly, the will to fight when fighting is necessary. We are prepared to face any reasonable test, Morrison replied. Are you? Admiral Corvin leaned back in his chair. Very well. The consortium will offer humanity 3 trials. First, a demonstration of your technology. Second, a test of your strategic thinking. And third, a combat trial where your ship faces one of our patrol vessels. Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. Combat trial. Non-lethal, of course, Speaker. Zenth added, but real combat nonetheless. Your ship against one of ours. If you succeed in all 3 trials, humanity will be granted provisional membership in the consortium. And if we fail? Admiral Corvin's smile showed far too many teeth. Then humanity will be banned from consortium space for 50 years. Long enough for your species to either develop proper strength or to be conquered by someone else. The room fell silent except for the hum of alien machinery. Outside, the refugee ships continued their desperate approach to the station, carrying the survivors of a world that had failed the galaxy's ultimate test. Morrison looked at his crew. Lisa's face was pale but determined. Mike looked eager for the challenge. Diana and Dr. Anderson appeared worried but ready to support whatever decision he made. We accept, Morrison said. Admiral Corvin's scales shifted to a satisfied orange color. Excellent. You have 3 days to prepare. Do not disappoint us, Captain. The galaxy has no place for the weak. As they left the conference room, Morrison could not shake the feeling that they had just agreed to something far more dangerous than a simple test. The consortium was not just evaluating humanity for membership. They were deciding whether humans deserved to exist at all. The first trial began exactly 24 hours later. Captain Morrison and his crew stood in the consortium's main technology demonstration hall, a massive chamber with gleaming white walls and floating observation platforms filled with alien spectators. Hundreds of beings had come to watch the primitive humans attempt to impress their technological superiors. Lisa Rodriguez carried a simple metal case containing their demonstration equipment. She looked nervous but determined as she set up on the designated platform. Around them, holographic displays showed the advanced technologies of other species, energy weapons that could cut through solid steel, ships that traveled faster than light, computers that could think like living beings. Remember, Morrison whispered to his engineer, we're not trying to match their technology. We're showing them what makes human engineering special. Admiral Corvin's voice boomed across the chamber. The human delegation may begin their technological demonstration. Lisa opened her case and pulled out what looked like a simple fusion reactor, small enough to fit in her hands. Murmurs of amusement rippled through the alien audience. This is our Mark 7 fusion containment system, Lisa announced, her voice steady despite the mocking sounds from the crowd. It produces the same energy output as reactors 10 times its size. Commander Naltor leaned forward on his observation platform. Impressive efficiency, but fusion power is ancient technology. We mastered it thousands of years ago. Yes, Lisa agreed. But look at this. She began dismantling the reactor with simple hand tools. Within minutes, she had it completely apart, showing each component to the audience. Human fusion reactors are designed for field repair. Any crew member can take one apart and put it back together in under 10 minutes. She began reassembling the device as she spoke. Most alien reactors require specialized facilities and expert technicians for maintenance. Our reactors can be fixed with basic tools in the middle of space, under battle conditions, or during emergencies. Several Vortani engineers in the audience stopped laughing. They began whispering among themselves, pointing at the simple but elegant design. Lisa finished rebuilding the reactor and powered it up. The device hummed quietly to life, producing a steady stream of energy readings that appeared on the hall's displays. Furthermore, she continued, human fusion reactors use a variety of fuel types: hydrogen, helium, even waste materials from other processes. They're designed to work with whatever resources are available. Speaker Zenth's crystal form pulsed thoughtfully. Adaptability over raw power. Interesting philosophy. Lisa packed away her equipment. Human technology prioritizes reliability and versatility. We build things that work when everything else fails. The alien audience was quieter now. The mocking had stopped, replaced by genuine interest from several species. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Round 1 to humanity. The second trial took place in the consortium's Strategic Simulation Center. Morrison sat in a chair surrounded by holographic displays showing a complex military scenario. Around him, alien observers watched as he studied. The tactical situation. The scenario was brutal. A small fleet of 12 ships faced an enemy force of 60 vessels. The enemy had superior firepower, better shields, and faster ships. Traditional tactics suggested immediate retreat or surrender. "You have 30 minutes to devise a strategy," Admiral Corvin announced. "Your fleet must achieve victory or hold the enemy long enough for reinforcements to arrive." Morrison studied the tactical display carefully. The enemy ships were arranged in a standard attack formation designed to maximize their firepower advantage. Their commanders clearly expected a conventional battle, but humans had never been conventional fighters. Morrison began moving his ships into seemingly random positions. To the watching aliens, his strategy appeared chaotic and desperate. His vessels scattered across the battlefield, some hiding behind asteroids, others positioning themselves far from the main enemy force. "What is he doing?" Commander Naltor muttered. "He's dividing his forces against a superior enemy. Basic military doctrine says to concentrate your strength." The simulation began. The enemy fleet advanced confidently toward what appeared to be Morrison's main force. But as they moved forward, they entered a carefully planned trap. Morrison's scattered ships attacked simultaneously from multiple directions. While the enemy focused their heavy weapons on the decoy force, human ships struck, their supply vessels and command ships from unexpected angles. Instead of trying to match the enemy's firepower, Morrison targeted their ability to coordinate and resupply. The enemy formation collapsed into chaos as their commanders lost contact with their fleets. Supply ships exploded, cutting off fuel and ammunition to the main battle group. Command vessels found themselves isolated and vulnerable. Within 20 minutes, the superior enemy force was defeated not through raw power, but through cunning and unconventional tactics. The simulation ended to stunned silence from the alien observers. Admiral Corvin's scales shifted through several colors before settling on dark green. "Explain your strategy, human." Morrison stood, up from the command chair. "Human military history teaches us that the stronger enemy expects you to fight their kind of battle. We win by fighting our kind of battle instead. We use speed, surprise, and misdirection to turn their strengths against them." A Drakmor general in the audience growled his approval. "Honorable victory through clever tactics. Your species thinks like warriors, but not all reactions were positive. Several alien commanders looked worried rather than impressed. If humans could defeat superior forces through strategy alone, what did that mean for the established order of galactic power? The final trial was announced 12 hours later. Morrison and his crew gathered in the New Frontiers Bridge as Admiral. Corvin's message came through their communications system. Captain Morrison, your final trial will be combat against the Consortium patrol ship Stellar Dominance. The engagement will take place in the designated combat zone outside the station. Rules of engagement are as follows. No weapons that can cause permanent damage to station infrastructure, no deliberately targeting life support systems, and combat ends when one ship surrenders or is disabled. Morrison looked at his crew. They had known this moment would come, but hearing it officially still made his stomach tight. The Stellar Dominance, Mike Thompson reported, reading from his tactical displays, is a Drakmor heavy cruiser. 3 times our mass, advanced energy shields, plasma weapons, and superior maneuverability. Captain Throck commanding. What are our chances in a straight fight? Morrison asked. Mike was quiet for a moment, running calculations. Honestly, Captain, almost 0. They outgun us in every category. Diana Foster looked up from her communication station. Sir, I'm monitoring alien communication channels. They're taking bets on how long we'll last. Most odds are giving us less than 5 minutes. Dr. Anderson shook his head. They really think we're that hopeless? Let them think that, Lisa said quietly from her engineering station. She had been unusually quiet since returning from the technology demonstration, working on something in the ship's lower levels. Captain, I need to show you some modifications I've been making. Morrison raised an eyebrow. What kind of modifications? Lisa's smile was mysterious and slightly dangerous. The kind that might just surprise our alien friends. The kind that will make them stop laughing at our primitive human technology. Outside their viewports, they could see the Stellar Dominance taking position in the combat zone. The Drakmor ship was beautiful and deadly, its hull gleaming with advanced armor and bristling with energy weapons. It looked like it could destroy the New Frontier without breaking stride. But Morrison was beginning to realize that in this galaxy, looks could be very deceiving. And if there was one thing humans had always been good at, it was making the impossible look easy. All crew to battle stations, Morrison announced. Time to show the galaxy what humans can really do. The final trial was about to begin. Captain Morrison followed Lisa Rodriguez through the narrow corridors of the New Frontier's lower decks. The chief engineer had been working in secret for weeks, and now she was finally ready to reveal what she had been building. I've been modifying our systems since we left Earth, Lisa explained as they walked. I knew we might face situations where our standard equipment wouldn't be enough. They stopped at a sealed hatch that Morrison had never seen opened before. Lisa pressed her hand to the scanner, and the door slid aside with a soft hiss. The room beyond was filled with equipment that Morrison barely recognized. Cables and conduits ran along the walls in complex patterns. Banks of computers hummed quietly in the darkness. In the center of the room sat what looked like a control panel covered in switches and displays. Lisa, what is all this? Morrison asked. Adaptive combat systems, she replied, moving to the central console. I've been studying alien technology since we arrived at the trade hub. Their ships are powerful, but they all have the same weakness. Which is? Lisa's fingers danced across the controls, bringing up displays that showed the internal structure of various alien vessels. They're specialized. Each system is designed for one specific purpose. Their shields block energy weapons, but nothing else. Their sensors detect energy signatures but miss other types of signals. Their tactics assume everyone fights the same way they do. Morrison studied the displays with growing understanding. And human technology is adaptable, Lisa finished. Our fusion reactors can be reconfigured to power different systems. Our hull plating can be modified to serve multiple purposes. Our weapons can fire different types of ammunition depending on what we're facing. She led him to another section of the room where racks of strange ammunition sat waiting. Some looked like simple metal rods. Others were more complex, with fins and guidance systems. Kinetic rounds, Lisa explained. Tungsten penetrators, explosive shells, electromagnetic pulse rounds, even some that release clouds of metallic chaff to confuse their sensors. Their energy shields won't stop any of these. Morrison picked up one of the tungsten rods. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. Will our railguns be able to fire these? Better than that, Lisa smiled. I've modified our entire weapons system. What the aliens see as primitive projectile weapons are actually adaptive kinetic systems that can be reconfigured for any target. They moved to the next section, where Lisa showed him modifications to their armor and defensive systems. The hull plating had been reinforced with adaptive materials that could redistribute energy impacts across the entire ship. When they hit us with energy weapons, Lisa explained, instead of trying to block the energy, we'll absorb it and channel it to our own systems. Their attacks will actually make us stronger. Morrison was amazed at the complexity and cleverness of the modifications. How long have you been planning this? Since we first saw their ships, Lisa admitted. I realized that trying to match their technology would be impossible, but humans have always been good at finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems. They were interrupted by Mike Thompson's voice over the ship's communication system. Captain, you need to get up here. We're receiving intelligence data about our opponent. Morrison and Lisa hurried back to the bridge where Mike was studying tactical displays showing detailed information about the stellar dominance. The Drakmor ship is impressive, Mike reported. Advanced plasma weapons, energy shields that can stop anything short of a direct hit from a battleship, and speed that makes us look like we're standing still. What about their tactics? Morrison asked. Straightforward and aggressive, Mike replied. Drakmor doctrine emphasizes honor in combat. They prefer direct attacks and open battle. Captain Throck is a veteran with over 50 victories against alien raiders and pirates. Diana Foster looked up from her communication station. Sir, I've been monitoring betting pools across the station. The odds against us have gotten even worse. Some aliens are betting on whether we'll last 3 minutes. Dr. Anderson shook his head sadly. They really think we're helpless. Good, Morrison said firmly. Let them underestimate us. It will make our victory even more shocking. As the crew prepared for battle, word of the upcoming combat trial spread throughout the trade hub. Thousands of aliens gathered in observation lounges and viewing platforms to watch the spectacle. Most expected to see the quick destruction of the primitive human vessel. In the consortium leadership chambers, Admiral Corvin met with his senior staff to discuss the implications of the human trials. Their technology demonstration was adequate, Commander Naltor reported. Simple but effective designs, nothing revolutionary. Their strategic thinking was more impressive, added General Krath, a Drakmor military advisor. The human captain showed genuine tactical skill. He thinks like a warrior, Speaker Zenth pulsed thoughtfully. What concerns me is their confidence. They accepted our combat trial without hesitation. Either they are foolishly brave or they know something we do not. Admiral Corvin's scales shifted to a darker color. Captain Throck will test them properly. If they have hidden capabilities, the stellar dominance will reveal them. Meanwhile, in secure communication channels, other conversations were taking place. Representatives of the Ravager Collective had agents throughout the trade hub, and they were very interested in the human trials. If these humans prove to be capable fighters, one agent reported, they could become a threat to our expansion plans. Then we ensure they do not survive to become a threat, came the reply. Arrange for an accident during the combat trial. Make it look like a systems malfunction. But not all the attention was hostile. Some alien species were beginning to see opportunity in humanity's unexpected capabilities. The Vortani traders were already calculating the potential profits from human adaptive technology. Several smaller species saw humans as possible allies against the more aggressive galactic powers. As the hour of combat approached, Captain Morrison gathered his crew on the bridge for final preparations. "Everyone knows their jobs," he said, looking at each of his officers in turn. "Lisa, are all modifications ready?" "All systems green, Captain. Our surprise packages are loaded and ready." "Mike, tactical analysis? Their ship is faster and more heavily armed, but they're expecting a conventional fight. When we show them what human ingenuity can accomplish, they won't know how to respond." "Diana, communications?" "All channels monitored. I'll keep you informed of any changes in their tactics or outside interference." "Dr. Anderson, medical?" "Ready for casualties, Captain, though I hope we won't have any." Morrison nodded and settled into his command chair. Through the main view screen, he could see the stellar dominance taking position in the combat zone. The Drakmor ship was magnificent and deadly, a perfect example of advanced alien military technology. But Morrison was no longer intimidated by alien superiority. His crew had proven they could match alien intelligence and exceed alien adaptability. Now it was time to show the galaxy that humans were not victims waiting to be conquered. "All stations report ready for combat," Mike announced. "Take us to the combat zone," Morrison ordered. "Time to make history." The combat zone hung in space like an invisible arena, marked only by floating beacons and energy barriers. Inside this designated area, two ships faced each other across the darkness. The massive Drakmor cruiser Stellar Dominance gleamed with polished armor and glowing weapon ports. Opposite it, the smaller human vessel New Frontier looked worn and modest by comparison. Throughout the trade hub, thousands of aliens watched through view screens and observation windows. Betting pools had reached enormous amounts, with nearly everyone wagering on how quickly the human ship would be destroyed. "Combat trial begins in 60 seconds, Admiral Corvin announced over the communication channels. "Both vessels may commence when ready." Captain Morrison sat calmly in his command chair, watching as the Drakmor ship began its approach. Captain Throck was following standard tactics, moving to optimal weapons range while presenting the smallest possible target profile. "Their shields are powering up," Mike Thompson reported from his tactical station. "Energy readings are off the charts. Those shields could probably stop a small asteroid." "Good," Morrison replied quietly. "The stronger their confidence, the greater their shock will be." On the bridge of the Stellar Dominance, Captain Throck studied his opponent with professional interest. The human ship was maintaining position, apparently waiting for the Drakmor vessel to close range. "Primitive tactics," Throck's weapons officer commented. "They plan to trade shots until one ship fails. They do not understand they are outmatched." "Perhaps," Throck replied. "But something troubles me. They show no fear, no attempt to flee. Either they are incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Or they have a plan we cannot see," suggested his tactical officer. Throck's eyes narrowed. "Maintain caution. Begin with a standard power demonstration. Show them what they face." The Drakmor ship opened fire with a brilliant display of plasma weapons. Beams of superheated energy lanced across space, lighting up the combat zone like artificial lightning. The shots were carefully aimed to miss the human ship by safe margins, a traditional show of force designed to encourage surrender. But the humans did not surrender. Instead, they began moving. The New Frontier's engines flared to life, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of trying to match the Drakmor ship's speed and maneuverability, the human vessel moved in short, unpredictable bursts. It would accelerate rapidly in one direction, then suddenly stop and change course, then drift silently before moving again. "What are they doing?" Commander Naltor wondered aloud as he watched from the trade hub. "That movement pattern makes no tactical sense." But Morrison knew exactly what he was doing. Human naval history was full of smaller ships defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics. The key was to be unpredictable, to deny the enemy the stable target they needed for accurate fire. Captain Throck grew frustrated with the human ship's erratic movement. "Enough games," he declared. "All weapons, target their engines, disable them quickly." The Stellar Dominance opened fire with its full weapons array. Plasma beams and energy bolts filled space around the new frontier, each shot carefully aimed to cripple the human ship without destroying it. The alien observers expected to see the human vessel explode or drift helplessly with its engines destroyed. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy weapons struck the New Frontier's hull and simply vanished. Instead of penetrating or exploding against the armor, the plasma beams seemed to be absorbed by the ship itself. The hull glowed briefly, where the energy hit, then returned to normal. "Energy absorption at 97%, Lisa reported calmly from her engineering station. All systems showing increased power levels. Throughout the trade hub, the alien observers fell silent. What they were seeing defied everything they knew about space combat. Captain Throck stared at his displays in disbelief. Impossible. Our weapons struck them directly. Where did the energy go? His science officer ran rapid scans of the human ship. "Sir, their hull appears to be redistributing energy impacts across their entire structure. Instead of trying to block our weapons, they are absorbing the energy and channeling it to their own systems." "Then we use more power," Throck decided. "Maximum firepower, overwhelm their absorption capacity." The Stellar Dominance unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons, energy torpedoes, and particle beams hammered the human ship in a continuous bombardment that lit up space for kilometers around, but the New Frontier continued to absorb each impact, its hull glowing brighter as more energy flowed into its systems. The ship not only survived the assault, it seemed to grow stronger with each hit. "This is impossible," Speaker Zenth whispered as he watched from the consortium chambers. "No known technology can absorb that much energy." Admiral Corvin's scales had shifted to a pale color that indicated deep concern. "What are we dealing with?" On the human ship's bridge, Morrison watched his power levels climbing steadily. "Lisa, how much more can we take?" "At current rates, we could absorb their fire for hours," Lisa replied. "But I think it's time to show them what we can really do." Morrison nodded. "Mike, are our weapons ready?" "All kinetic systems loaded and targeted, Captain. Waiting for your order." Morrison took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. "All weapons," he said clearly. "Fire." The New Frontier's hull suddenly opened along hidden seams, revealing weapon ports that had been invisible to alien sensors. But instead of energy weapons like the aliens expected, solid projectiles launched from the human ship at incredible velocities. Tungsten rods, each one accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance between the ships in seconds. The Stellar Dominance's energy shields, designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, offered no resistance to solid matter moving at such tremendous speeds. The kinetic rounds punched through the Drakmor ship's shields as if they did not exist. The tungsten penetrators struck the hull with the force of small meteors, punching holes completely through the armored plating. Explosive rounds detonated against critical systems, while electromagnetic pulse charges scrambled the ship's electronics. Within 30 seconds, the mighty Stellar Dominance was crippled and helpless, its weapons destroyed, its engines dead, its shields collapsed. The silence in the combat zone was absolute. Across the trade hub, thousands of alien observers stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. The impossible had happened. A primitive human ship had completely destroyed an advanced consortium cruiser. Captain Throck's voice came over the communication channel, filled with respect and amazement. "Human vessel, this is Captain Throck. I surrender. Your victory is complete and honorable." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Thank you, Captain Throck. We are standing by to assist with repairs and medical aid if needed." As rescue ships moved toward the disabled Drakmor vessel, The implications of what had just happened began to sink in throughout the galaxy. The humans had not just won a single battle. They had demonstrated a completely new approach to space combat that made traditional defenses obsolete. The laughter had stopped. The mockery was over. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy as a force to be reckoned with. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout the Centauri trade hub. In the hours following the New Frontier's impossible victory, emergency meetings were called in every major faction's headquarters. The betting pools had collapsed completely, leaving thousands of aliens who had wagered against humanity facing enormous losses. Captain Morrison and his crew were no longer treated as primitive curiosities. When they docked after the combat trial, they found the station's highest-ranking officials waiting to greet them personally. Admiral Corvin himself stood at the airlock, his scales showing colors that indicated deep respect. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Trade Consortium, I congratulate you on a victory that will be discussed for generations. Your tactics were brilliant, your technology unexpected, and your courage beyond question." Morrison stepped forward and offered his hand in the human gesture of greeting. After a moment's hesitation, Admiral Corvin clasped it with his own scaled hand. "Thank you, Admiral. We came here seeking friendship and cooperation. I hope this demonstration shows that humanity can be a valuable ally." Behind the Admiral stood Captain Throck, his arm in a medical support device, but his expression filled with genuine admiration. The Drakmor warrior approached Morrison with the careful steps of someone showing great respect. "Human Captain," Throck said, his voice carrying none of its earlier dismissiveness. "You have taught me that strength comes in many forms. Your ship defeated mine not through superior firepower, but through superior thinking. This is a lesson my people will remember." The formal ceremonies continued for hours. Species after species approached the human delegation, offering trade agreements, technology exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. The Vortani traders were particularly eager to discuss licensing agreements for human adaptive technology, but not. All the attention was positive. In secure channels throughout the station, darker conversations were taking place. The humans represent a fundamental threat to established power structures, a Ravager collective agent reported to his superiors. Their combat techniques make traditional defenses worthless. If they develop this technology further, they could challenge any empire in the galaxy. Then they must be eliminated before they become too strong, came the reply. Begin planning for a preemptive strike against their home system. Similar discussions were happening among other aggressive species. The humans had proven they were not helpless victims, which made them dangerous to civilizations built on conquering the weak. However, many species saw opportunity rather than threat. The crystalline helix offered to share their advanced computing technology in exchange for human adaptive engineering techniques. Several smaller civilizations approached humanity with proposals for mutual defense agreements. In the consortium's main council chamber, the leadership debated humanity's future status. The 3 trials had been passed with results that exceeded all expectations. Their technology demonstration showed innovation and practical thinking, Commander Nalter reported. Their strategic test revealed tactical brilliance, and their combat trial demonstrated capabilities that redefine space warfare. Speaker Zenth's crystal form pulsed with complex patterns. The question is no longer whether they deserve membership. The question is, what level of membership to offer. Their combat effectiveness suggests they should be granted high-tier status immediately. Admiral Corvin considered carefully before responding. "I propose full membership with immediate access to all trade networks and defensive alliances. However, we must also establish protocols for their military technology. Other species will demand safeguards." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be granted full consortium membership, the first species ever to achieve such status so quickly after first contact. When the decision was announced, Captain Morrison felt a mixture of pride and concern. They had achieved their diplomatic goals, but success had brought new responsibilities and new dangers. "Captain," Diana Foster reported privately, "I'm intercepting communications that suggest some species are already planning hostile actions against Earth. Our demonstration may have made us a target." Morrison nodded grimly. "I expected as much. We've shown that humans can defend themselves, which threatens civilizations that rely on intimidating weaker species." Dr. Anderson joined the conversation. "What's our next step? We came here as explorers and diplomats, but it seems like we might be heading toward becoming warriors." "We'll be whatever humanity needs us to be," Morrison replied. "But we'll do it on our terms, using human values and human methods." Over the following days, the crew of the New Frontier found themselves at the center of a galaxy-wide transformation. Species that had been enemies for centuries began reconsidering their relationships, knowing that human mediation might offer alternatives to constant warfare. The refugee ships from Kepler Prime approached the human delegation with a desperate request. "The Ravager Collective grows stronger every day," their leader explained. "Traditional consortium policy is to let strong species conquer weak ones. But you have shown that strength can be achieved through intelligence rather than brutality. Will you help us reclaim our world?" Morrison looked at his crew, seeing the determination in their faces. This was exactly the kind of situation they had hoped to address through diplomacy. "We'll need to discuss this with Earth Command," Morrison replied carefully. "But I can tell you that humans believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." As their time at the trade hub came to an end, Morrison reflected on what they had accomplished. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as primitive to being respected as equals in less than a week. But more importantly, they had demonstrated that there were alternatives to the galaxy's harsh philosophy of might makes, right? The New Frontier undocked from the trade hub 3 days later, but it was no longer the same ship that had arrived. It carried trade agreements worth billions, technology exchanges that would advance human civilization by decades, and defensive alliances that would protect Earth from aggressive neighbors. But most importantly, it carried proof that humanity belonged among the stars. As they prepared for the journey home, Morrison stood on the bridge watching the massive station shrink in their rear displays. Around them, alien ships moved respectfully aside to clear their departure path, a courtesy that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. "Setting course for Earth, Captain," Diana announced. "Take us home," Morrison ordered. "We have a lot to report." As the New Frontier entered hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's acceptance into the galactic community, Morrison thought about the future. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of aggressive empires and hostile species, but it was also full of potential allies and incredible opportunities. Humanity had taken its first steps into that larger universe, and those steps had announced Earth as a civilization to be respected, not conquered. The aliens had laughed when they saw the human ship, but they had stopped laughing when it fired. The age of human isolation was over. The age of humanity among the stars had begun, and across the galaxy, the message was clear. Underestimate humanity at your own peril.